You are listening to Armchair Healthcare, a podcast on pills, placebos, and policy.
So what do you got for me this week, Max?
JAMA recently published an article, The Association of Digital Media Use with ADHD.
Mm-hmm.
And, these kinds of studies, there's always so much wrong with them, and they get highlighted in the media and by journals as prestigious as JAMA when they're really full of it.
So this is kids looking at their phones, right?
Looking at their phones, streaming, texting, all that stuff. So there have been previous studies on like video games.
Okay, I see where this is going. Or at least it's not causing violence this time.
No, it's just supposedly increasing your ADHD symptoms. So in this study, they didn't use a proper questionnaire, really. It's all self-reported. It's not physician-filled out questionnaire. It's filled out by these 15 to 16-year-olds. Mm-hmm. And as the study itself actually says, the specificity of this scale is 60% compared to physician, reported scales.
Okay.
So that means 40% of the people are false positives. That's a really high rate. The endpoint wasn't normal kids are now diagnosed as having ADHD. It's just they're exhibiting ADHD symptoms, which can be a lot of things. Like if you cut someone off while they're talking, that's an ADHD symptom.
I think I have that.
I think we all have that. So I think it's a very sensitive questionnaire. So there's going to be a lot of false positives. So, and then, when they have the primary endpoint of this trial show that I believe the hazard ratio is 1.11. So there's an 11% higher likelihood of having ADHD symptoms if you use digital media more, which I would say is probably not clinically meaningful. I mean, an 11% increase, that's sort of fuzzy, especially when you're considering the scale has a 40% false positive rate.
Have you seen the teens these days? They love the phones. They absolutely love the phones, Max. So I'm pretty sure this is going to cause them all to be ADHD.
And violent, I'm sure.
And violent. And I can see this at our nightly news at 10. What's affecting our teens? Phones are bad. Phones are bad for teens. I think this falls into all the sort of the rest of the baby boomer phone phobia. Which is like, everything's going to shit. No one's connecting anymore because they are all just staring at their phones all the time.
That's been kind of the recurrent theme for any kind of new media. I think they said that when books became widespread.
The phonograph. No one's even going to go listen to music anymore. Everyone's going to stay inside and just listen to their phonographs.
Exactly.
Okay, so let me also get on a rant about ADHD. We've talked about this a little bit before about sort of shifting diagnostic criteria. So I've met people that I can honestly say, oh my gosh, there's something wrong with that person, and I think we can call that ADHD. But I also think ADHD is, in a lot of cases, it's kids that are acting like kids. Also kids that just had an ice cream cone, and also kids that didn't get a good night's sleep. I think there's a lot of other things out there that can contribute to a quote-unquote ADHD diagnosis.
Yes. One of the ways to diagnose someone is if they have trouble controlling their behavior. So if you have a 13-year-old boy, chances are they're going to have some trouble controlling their behavior and will be impulsive. That's why you have shows like Jackass.
And I think this gets to the problem of medicalizing otherwise normal behavior and variation between people. All right, so anyone that's like even slightly out of the norm has got ADHD or Asperger's or something.
Or there's a company out there called Verge that recently got funded about $30 million.
Verge.
Yes, Verge.
That's
Rhymes
my
with purge.
That's my American Gladiator's name.
That's awesome.
Nitro. Verge.
Yeah, so Verge is using genomics and AI to come up with drugs for ALS and Parkinson's.
Okay, so this bothers me. This bothers me a lot.
Really?
Because I feel like this, and the CEO is a girl in her 20s, right?
She's like 29 and I
Okay.
believe a dropout.
I'm smelling a Theranos. I mean, just a little bit, because it seems like a little bit too buzzy. You know what I mean? I say, oh, let's get AI to cure diseases. I mean, we just figured out how to get AI to do hot dog, not hot dog, like literally just a number of years ago. And that's really where it's at. AI has gotten to the point where it's like actually getting all right at doing stuff that people are really freaking good at, like identifying hot dogs. But it's really having a lot of trouble, like becoming this super Skynet hive mind that is far surpasses people at the moment. It's mostly good at identifying pictures and that sort of thing. I think the problem with AI is that we don't have the technology yet, really. So these guys are going to use some genomics, and they've had participated in one paper or something like that that maybe found some genetic markers of some disease. All right, that's great. Like, the problem here, and the problem with in general drug development is the whole development part. All right, and these guys don't have a drug. They don't have anything to look for yet. They just have this like sort of pie in the sky pitch. All they have is a pitch. Parkinson's, we'll use AI to fix that.
Don't forget ALS.
ALS, something that is just so easy to develop drugs for. I mean, the thing is, even if these guys, let's say their AI is great, it finds some protein that no one has noticed before in all the previous genetic screens for these diseases that is druggable, then they have to actually make the drug, which is like a lot of it. Making the drug and doing the clinical stuff with it. As with any other sort of pipeline, like we talked about last week, we're in the pre-discovery phase, and I'm also in pre-discovery for curing all the world's problems. I'm in pre-discovery for aging and cancer and violence.
Don't forget hair loss.
Hair loss, yeah, that's the one.
And, another thing about this company is it's being funded by Draper Fisher Jurvetson, which is exactly the same VC that funded Elizabeth Holmes at Theranos.
Oh, so it's the next Theranos. So, I mean, as long as they can find a greater fool that doesn't understand AI or drug development, I think we're good.
They seem to just like investing in what seems like the next big thing. They're big investors in Solar City and Tesla, which, Solar City, if they hadn't been bailed out by Tesla, would have gone bankrupt. And Tesla looks like it's kind of on the verge itself.
Can we talk about Tesla for a minute? I mean, I think the sort of strange nerd contingent is turning against Mr. Musk.
Yes. Well, he should probably not have called one of the Thai boy rescuers a pedophile.
Yeah.
That might have been a bad move.
Bad PR move. Yeah, that was not cool. Because even strange nerds could tell that that guy was probably a decent dude and not a pedo.
I don't understand how the board can't rein Musk in. I guess he just owns too much of the friggin' company.
And they're all like his nephews and cousins and friends and stuff.
Yes. So he has, I remember when they were buying Solar City, I looked at the composition of both boards, and he had family members on both boards. There were people, Tesla executives on the Solar City board and vice versa. And then you got Draper Fisher Jurvetson reps on both boards. So it was really very incestuous. There might be one actual independent director on the Tesla board. So I think shorting it has not necessarily been the best move so far.
I know. Something irrational, longer insolvent, something. As soon as you take the weird nerd market out of Tesla, I think it falls apart.
Yeah, and one also not raising money and being on their current trajectory, even if they keep the weird nerd market, they're going to bankruptcy. I mean, it's pretty easy to extrapolate. But that said, this is such a hot retail kind of stock that it's just decoupled from reality. Eventually, that stops, but it can take a while. I mean, look at Netflix.
Mm-hmm.
I mean, they're burning $10 billion a year producing mostly mediocre shows, and yet their stock was one of the best performing stocks in the market.
But if they can buy all the mediocre shows, then there'll be none left for cable, I think. Because have you ever seen cable, Max? Cable's pretty mediocre.
I don't know about that. AMC has some good shows. HBO has good shows. Showtime has good shows. Starz had a really nice multiverse show on like a few months ago.
Yeah, but there's a lot of other channels. There's like ESPN4 and Animal Planet 3.
Well, yeah. I mean, those get like horrible ratings, but on Netflix, they actually have a very, I feel at least, that they have a very bad record on following up good shows with another season in orderly, predictable manner. It's not like every year in July you'll have a new Stranger Things. It could take a year and a half. It can take 2 years. I don't know when the next season of Mindhunter is coming. So right now I'm stuck, thinking, let's see, should I watch this Finnish murder mystery or should I watch this French murder mystery? Because that's like a lot of what they have. And a lot of their probably better rated stuff is this international shows. I did watch an interesting Australian take on House of Cards.
What's the name of the show?
It was called The Secret City.
Secret City. All right. We got off track. We're supposed to be talking about healthcare, Max. Focus.
I think we have ADHD.
I think we have ADHD.
Yes.
We keep interrupting each other.
Just one more thing I want to mention. It's just amazing how the people who are vilifying these different platforms or actions like video games or the digital media, my guess is they're people who probably don't use either of them that much.
Well, the future is scary, Max.
Future is always scary.
Well, I mean, yeah, look at this now. I mean, they shouldn't be afraid of phones. They should be afraid of genetic engineering because that crap's happening. That's going on now. We're genetically engineering people. We're going to have humanzees and shark people like in 10 years. Animal-human hybrids. It's going to be crazy. Mark my words. The first thing they're going to do is they're going to be like, oh, look, we crossed this sheep with a fish. And
why would that be the first thing they do?
Well, just to prove that they can. And before too long, it's going to be people with horns. That's what we should all be afraid of.
I think they're more likely to do something like start growing prime steaks in labs.
Oh, yeah. There was actually recently a fight about this. I think it was at some conference. Maybe it was like a focus group held by the FDA because there are many factors. Because, lab-grown meats, it's common. It's common. Yeah. And is it meat is the question.
Well, that's a Talmudic question. That's for sure. Oh, my God. The rabbis will go crazy over this one.
But so you get some meat cells. You get some beef cells. And you grow them in a dish. Is that beef?
Yeah, because you have beef cells.
Well, but the beef industry doesn't like that. Is it meat?
Oh, so sort of like the sugar industry kept people from calling stevia like a sweetener. Instead, it's like an herbal supplement or something.
I have no idea.
No, there was a big fight over that. The sugar industry did not like stevia being called a sweetener. So it's like an herb.
All right, so, I mean, there's people on all sizes. Oh, maybe we should call it a tissue product. It's like, beef-flavored tissue product. Delicious. Lab-grown, how about non-animal protein emulsion?
Yeah, you can have that with your Tang. That would be perfect.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and evidently almond milk. Almond milk's the next one.
Oh, yes.
Because almonds don't lactate.
Yeah, so you can't call it milk?
Yes. So
it's almond milk-like product?
No, it's almond emulsion.
Yeah, that sounds very Blade Runner-ish.
Hey, if we're still calling American cheese, we can call almond milk.
Oh no, don't forget the squeezed cheese.
Squeezed cheese. Yes, these things are not cheese, and they're not even a chez, C-H-E-Z. They're definitely not that either.
What's a chez?
A chez, it's the way that they get around branding it or actually calling it cheese. It's like, it's squeeze, C-H-E-Z.
I see.
Right? But yeah, I know American cheese actually has a special dispensation to call itself cheese because it's not cheese.
What is it?
It's a cheese product. It's like cheese mixed with stuff, mainly milk, but it's not like just a cheese. It's processed, but it has a special dispensation to be called cheese.
Okay. Bringing it back to healthcare.
Oh, this is just all FDA stuff, right? We're still on FDA stuff. We're doing better. We're getting there. We're getting there. Back to healthcare. Bring us back, Max.
We were just talking about Verge, getting some private funding. Companies like this are being able to get funding. VCs are being rewarded for funding this stuff. Like, look at Rubius, which we talked about in our previous podcast. That went public and now has a $2.4 billion valuation when they're a year from IND. You have these Rubius companies, these unicorns going public, and the VCs they're fine. They get their exit, they get their big payoff, they sell 6 months down the line, and they move on to the next company. They don't really care if it eventually works. They got their exit. They don't have to worry about it anymore. Their goal is to get something that successfully exits, not something that successfully actually produces a drug. That's more like the public investors worry. Private investors just want to find a greater fool. That's their entire business model. So, and they've had like a really wonderful first half. Silicon Valley Bank came out with a report on VCs and kind of the state of the VC market. So in the first half of 2018, there were $20 billion worth of biopharma exits. And that's more than all the exits in 2017, when there were $18.7 billion worth of exits. So they could probably take either the rest of this year off or all of next year off and be totally fine.
Yeah, they've all made their funds. You know what I mean? They can just try and get as many exits as they can, close up the fund, and start putting something else together. You know what I mean? They don't even have to make one or two of these work in any given fund for it to be a success. It's a bull market. Everyone feels like a genius. And it's the same thing. I mean, I blame CAR-T for this. CAR-T and those big buyouts. I mean, after the downturn in 2015, I was like, all right, this is going to be like this until we get some big buyouts. And it took till mid-2017, the Juno and the Kites. And now everyone's really excited about new technology again. Everyone's like, ooh, what's the next new big thing? Like, until that wears out and they realize that CRISPR's mostly going to kill people, we're in salad days.
What was that?
Salad days. You never heard of that?
Salad days?
Yeah. Salad days.
A salad day?
Yeah, it's a day it's filled with salad.
Okay.
Gravy. We're on the gravy train. There you go.
Yes.
I thought maybe salad would resonate a little bit with you a little bit more, Max.
Why? Because I eat a lot of salad?
You do eat a lot of salad. You're
yeah, but I don't like talk about salad.
Kale munching hippie.
I am pretty much a kale munching hippie. Do yoga, all that stuff. Who would have thunk it? So the VCs, they're really cashing in on other people's stupidity, and they're going to be able to really weather any downturn. And one's coming. I mean, it's inevitable. It has to. I mean, we haven't done away with the business cycle or market cycles.
It's going to take a major CAR-T failing or something like that, or maybe CRISPR, they actually start treating a few people with CRISPR and like their skin melts or something like that, and then everyone's gonna be like, oh, maybe we shouldn't have played God this whole time.
Well, a lot of the investment is just really momentum based. I think just once things stop working for whatever reason, it doesn't have to be a fundamental reason, people will start just exiting. And I think Howard Marks, the investor, had a really great quote. It went something like, the more hype something is, the more pain it causes down the line. And that's completely true. And that's what's going to happen with a lot of these unicorns. I mean, there was one that went public. I think it was either last year or earlier this year, Denali Therapeutics. That was one of these early stage hype line Alzheimer's neurodegenerative disease companies. They're, I think, half their IPO value and, at a 52-week low.
Bill Gates is getting Alzheimer's, isn't he?
Yes, he's getting, the Gates Foundation is going to be spending $30 million on trying to find a diagnostic to detect Alzheimer's early. I'm happy that he's trying something. Like, we need money for research like this, but I would think there's a better use for this money, because I just don't see how this is going to work.
You know what they should use?
What?
AI.
Oh, yeah. AI.
Let's use some AI. I think that'll fix it. Let the robots sort it out.
Yeah, we'll get to like 50% sensitivity and 50% specificity, no problem.
That shouldn't be a problem at all. I think we can beat that.
A monkey could do that, yeah.
Coin can do that.
When was the last time we saw a mental condition diagnosed with a blood test?
I read something one time that said they could do a blood test. Bear with me here, because this might not be true, but I'm going to say it anyway. They could do a blood test to measure oxytocin or norepinephrine or something like that in people's blood. It could predict if they were in love.
Ooh, the love test.
A love test. You could test people's blood, and because their brains were so happy and releasing so many endorphins, you could actually do a blood test and be like, yes, this person is in love right now. That honeymoon stage of love. I mean, a lot of these things are more possible than you think, but the problem with neurodegenerative diseases is that what exactly is going to sort of slip out of the brain that you could reasonably measure in like a non-invasive way? I mean, this is all like, it's really hypothetical. Like, this may or may not exist. And most stuff right now is pointing towards does not exist. But I mean, there's a chance. There's plenty of other disorders out there. We're also looking for the biomarker that is released when something goes awry. And most of these we do not have. There's a pretty good one for damage to your heart, troponin, but besides that, there's virtually nothing.
Mm-hmm. Oh, and speaking of something that doesn't exist, there's a Chinese company that recently announced positive phase 3 data for their anti-Alzheimer's drug.
Oh, yes. Yes.
Yes.
Oh, this one upset me. This one made me upset.
Yes, Shanghai Green Valley. Kind of confused how this drug would even kind of work.
Okay, so let me bitch about this because I saw this and I was like, what? Okay, so it's, what is it again? Oligo.
Yes, sodium oligomanurate.
All right, so this is a polysaccharide, carboxylic acid of mannose. This is a component of alginate, i.e. stuff from seaweed that's used in a lot of modern gastronomy. It's used as a thickening agent.
Okay.
All right, so this is a thickening agent that this company is injecting into people.
Yes, and couldn't that cause a stroke in somebody?
Well, that's actually what I was like, okay, giving these guys the benefit of the doubt, I don't think it does anything with Alzheimer's, right? Because this is not going to cross the blood-brain barrier. It's not going to cross any barrier. It's not going to leave your blood, right? The molecule is just too big, right? You might, if you ate it, you might digest it. You'll digest it and break it down that way. But just being injected directly into your blood, it's not gonna do anything. Giving them the benefit of the doubt, there might be a cognitive impact by actually preventing strokes and ischemia and that sort of stuff. Because you just smooth it over. This sort of slimy thickening agent in your blood makes it all just flow. Makes those clots just fall right out of your brain. And it might have it's kind of similar to heparin, so it might actually have some anti-heparin-like effects. And I believe there's something out there where oligomanurate can inhibit heparinase. But that's the closest I can get. I don't know. Alzheimer's? I don't think so. What else you got, Max?
Politico reported that, as you know, there is a spot in the Supreme Court, and President Trump has nominated this guy Kavanaugh to fill that spot. And one of the cases he might hear, if he's approved, will be over off-label promotion of drugs and whether the FDA can regulate that. Because, it's a little bit of a First Amendment issue, because right now it's illegal. Like, let's say Pfizer, they're selling Lipitor, and they had a phase 2 or phase 3 study showing that it works really well in gout. So they are actually not allowed to, the salespeople are not allowed to show that phase 3 data to the doctor when they're in their office, because that would be considered off-label promotion, and that's illegal. And Department of Justice has really clamped down on that really hard. Apparently there is a case winding its way through the system where pharma is going to try to get a little more breathing room there.
Yeah, so this is a very tricky one because it's just so ripe for abuse. But also, you want not everything. If you already have an approved drug and it's approved and it's safe and new uses are found for it, which happens all the time, I sort of want that to get out there and become useful to the actual practicing physicians as fast as possible. But yeah, I'm not sure how I feel about this one in general. I've waffled on this one for a long time. I mean, and so has policy has waffled on this too, because you'll have court cases that say, okay, as long as it's a true claim backed up by research or something like that, then you can say it, and then that gets reversed, and it's just been a whole mess here for decades as far as what you can get away with, what you can't get away with.
But the physician's still the gatekeeper.
Yeah, and they can do whatever they want, right? So they can give you all sorts of weird stuff for whatever they feel like. The physician is still the gatekeeper. It's just a matter of what can the reps say. Right, because if one physician can tell another physician that Lipitor is great for gout, they can put this in a paper, right? You can talk about this at a medical conference, but then the salesperson can't say anything about it.
Although, I remember there was a case where, if you remember Jazz Pharmaceuticals, they got big by selling the date rape drug for narcolepsy.
Mm-hmm.
So they were also trying to get it approved for fibromyalgia, and they were running studies. And, the law enforcement agencies were very much against it being approved to begin with. But they really didn't want it to be expanded to fibromyalgia. They arrested one of the doctors presenting data on the drug in fibromyalgia. This was a while back, but they actually did that because they said he was doing off-label promotion.
That's crazy. Okay, I'm not.
Yeah, so
I don't
it
like
can
that.
be abused on both
Well,
sides.
maybe.
Really.
Well, was it because it was a scheduled drug and he didn't get DEA permission?
Why should he have to have permission to like present data?
Well, no, probably because he did a study. But for any controlled substance, you can't just like do a study on a controlled substance without getting the DEA's like sign off on it. Like you can't just like I can't just like be studying marijuana in my basement and have like kilos of marijuana down there and say, oh, I'm doing a study. You can't do that. You have to like ask for permission and then they send you some. I actually ran into this. I worked at a neuroscience lab, and a lot of the stuff used in neuroscience, it's mostly toxins from crazy little animals. We had some scorpion toxins and stuff like that, and illegal drugs. We had like methamphetamine and regular amphetamine, all that sort of stuff just sitting around in the lab. But we had to ask permission for it. I wanted to buy some Botox one time. My boss was like, don't even bother. Don't even bother asking for Botox. It's such a pain in the butt to get because it's potentially used for bioterror, and so they don't really let anyone have it. So we found we use something else. But they have this stuff in the clinic. You know, you can go to the lip injection place and I can get some Botox, but I can't have any here for the lab. And he's like, potentially weaponize it.
While, all these kind of physician's assistants, actually administering the drug are, I guess, less of a security risk than a chemistry student.
I guess so.
Yeah, none of this stuff ever makes sense. Yeah, so I think maybe we will wrap it up with just one more thing. Stat News had a pretty interesting call the other day on Amarin, which has a fish oil tablet.
No, it's not
capsule.
It's not just fish oil.
Well, it's EPA.
It's EPA.
Yeah, so
it's the good stuff.
Yes, the good stuff, the pure stuff, and so they're running the Reduce It trial, which is going to be a cardiovascular outcome trial. Data is supposed to be out by the end of this quarter.
Mm-hmm.
So that could be pretty interesting. And the doctor made some interesting points. Fish oils have gone a little bit of a bad name. They failed other studies for outcomes. But he made a good point that the Amarin dose is actually double what's usually given in these kinds of studies. Like they give 4 grams a day, and a lot of these other studies use like 1.8 grams a day. Mm-hmm. And usually they're not testing just pure EPA. So it's like DHA and EPA. So there's like a mix, and DHA increases your LDL. Without that LDL raising, the Amarin drug, might have, with a higher dose, none of that LDL stuff, the Amarin drug might have a better chance of working. And it's much, much cheaper than any of the PCSK9s. So he was saying that if this study worked and they showed a 15% reduction in cardiovascular outcomes, you can definitely see doctors placing PCSK9s with this and then just push back the PCSK9s one more line.
Yeah, that makes sense to me. I mean, I feel like if they can just get rid of the fishy burps, I'll be happy.
I don't get the fishy burps. I take omega-3s.
I get fishy burps.
Well, that's a problem. The big problem with Amarin is their IP is it's fishy, not fishy, but
it's a little fishy. So do they synthesize their drug, or do they extract it from? They smush fishes.
They smush fishes.
Okay.
In a proprietary smushing process.
Yeah, that's the tricky part. That's the tricky part because anyone could have a proprietary fish smasher.
Well, yeah, but there is something to be said for having kind of a time-tested method that has been backed up by data.
I know they have a patent on ultra pure EPA, which is the weakest patent ever because you just make it a little less pure EPA and then there's no problem.
It could be that purity that gives it the efficacy, like you don't know. So, for example,
yeah, but you can just I'm just gonna sprinkle a little Lipitor in there, or I'm just gonna sprinkle like a little bit of bread flour in there or whatever. It's less pure. Boom, we're good to go.
Okay. I think in this case there might be some brand stickiness. So there's another drug that's DHA and EPA, Loveza, that's been on the market for a while. It went generic a couple years ago. It used to have $1 billion in sales, and now it has about $300 million every year, and that's actually pretty good.
Pretty good. I mean, it's just a supplement, right? I mean, it's a prescription supplement. It's a supplement, so it should have more brand power here. So I get it. Yeah, I'm a convert. I mean, I used to be so skeptical. I was like, these guys are just gonna sell fish oil. Give me a break. And somebody else was like, another analyst was like, yeah, but they don't have to pay for it. Insurance pays for it. Oh, okay.
But I mean, you have to go to the doctor. I mean, that's
Yeah.
and that is a gating factor.
That is a gating factor, but you know, if you're already there, I mean, things prescribed by doctors make a lot of money.
Yes, I mean, as we saw with Loveza, I mean, they made $1 billion a year.
I need to start a prescription vitamin company. Maybe Pyramid Biosciences can sell prescription vitamin K for age-related macular degeneration. Ooh, I think I like it. I like it.
There have been a lot of companies that have tried to develop versions of vitamin B6 for a variety of different indications. They always fail, but I remember Nephrogenics was doing it.
Was that the one? I remember Alcobra. Great name for a pharmaceutical company. I love it. Alcobra.
Yeah, like the villains in G.I. Joe.
Yes, exactly. It was vitamin B for ADHD.
Oh, that sounds perfect.
Yeah, because no one's tried this. And guess what? It didn't work.
So yeah, we'll do riboflavin for mild cognitive impairments. The flavin?
Riboflavin for mild cognitive impairment. That could work. Some of these might actually work, like after, say, a traumatic brain injury.
Okay.
You give like a massive bolus of some vitamin.
Sure.
It's going to take years to find out if that actually works.
Oh yeah, so our endpoint will be some sort of chronic disability scale with TBI.
So we have a intervention immediately after the traumatic brain injury, first 12 hours. So this is going to enroll really slowly, and we follow up for long-term outcomes and cognitive impairment over the next 10 to 15 years.
Oh, great. We can do like a nice longitudinal study.
Yes.
And then when the FDA says, no, we want you to run another study, well, we'll just run another 15-year study.
It's cost of progress.
Yes. I mean, Northwest Bio has been running the same study for, 10 years and still no data? Actually, it's longer now. It's like 12.
All right. Well, I guess that's it.
That's all we have for you. But don't forget to subscribe to Armchair Healthcare.
All right. And see you next week. Our theme music is by Hazar.